What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I am Love Coach Scott Catamas, and they're my friends, all in the Zoom room. I see Dia and Eleanor and Ian and Jeffrey and Pat and Sylvia, Lynn, Leaf, Richard, and well, I'm not going to mention the people who don't have their cameras on. The ones who get the cameras on get their mention. But we have a wonderful group of people with us tonight, and we are going to be replaying the interview with Marianne Williamson. And we're going to have live music, 3 songs from Omashar. So we're going to be moving and dancing. And we're going to periodically stop and talk about what she had to say and how that impacts you. So it's going to be a longer show than usual because it's going to, we're going to have the original interview and then feedback from all of you. So that's going to be fun. I want to also make an important announcement. So I'm going to do it both at the beginning and at the end. There was going to be a big event this weekend. Our friends that put on the Disclosure Festival, Adrienne and company, we're going to have a big festival built around a mass meditation for peace. It was going to take place at Lake Castaic, California. At one point, I was going to go down and do the Awakening World from there, but then we found out that they didn't have a good internet. Unfortunately, there's a big fire, wildfire, and they had to cancel the festival. However, the mass meditation is still going to take place, and it's going to take place this Saturday, June 22nd at 2:22 Pacific time. So I really want to ask everybody, get out your calendars and mark down, like 2 o'clock, stop what you're doing, get settled, go somewhere, and let's all drop in and meditate together, because this is going to be important, and it's a big one. There's a lot of people from all over that are indeed going to be participating in this, and I want for you to participate in it. And I am also putting into the chat box the information on it. There you go. So for those in the Zoom room, it's in the chat box. And of course, for those of you that are watching on Facebook or YouTube, if you go to massmeditationinitiative.org, massmeditationinitiative.org, and you can get more information about it there. And let's put our good friend Adrienne into our thoughts and our prayers. Imagine all that goes into organizing a huge festival, 3 stages, people coming in from all over the world, and 3 days before the festival, you have to cancel it because of a fire. So let's send some love, some Global Peace Tribe love over to our friend Adrienne. He's been on the show a few times. He's a really good guy, and he's who runs Disclosure Fest. All right, before we get to Marianne, we are going to go to the alpha of the program. And by now, those of you who are regulars know that the alpha, as well as the omega, is our good friend, our beloved brother, the man who makes all things happen, Mr. Omashar.
The alpha, yeah, I'm not too sure how to take that. I guess it's just the beginning. I suddenly I looked at my stomach and thought, is that what alpha is? And then
There used to be a market called Alpha Beta.
Right, shows me where my head was at in that moment. And yes, such such love and support needed for the organizer. Adrian, did you say?
Yes.
Because it's a massive thing. That a festival like that takes at least a year to present, to put together, to get the presenters together. So holy smoke, I cannot imagine. So the least we can do is turn up for the meditation on a Saturday. And I just put it on my calendar, the actual time, because I thought it was later. But it's 3:22 for us.
3:22 in Colorado, exactly.
Mountain time. So here's a little song called Trust to Love, because we all need to trust to love.
That's one of our favorites. Lots of people love that one for sure.
Me too. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Omashar. So I'm definitely going to want to hear what you have to say about what Marianne shares with us. So we're going to go ahead and play the video from last month. The reason we had to hold it, by the way, was Marianne being, we're being kind of her people, as Debra says. She was honest about some things, and she didn't want, well, the primary season was still happening, and she was still kind of a political target for some of which she said to be out there publicly. So that's where we kept it just to the Zoom room audience. But now we are able to publicly share what she had to say, and it's beautiful. We'll start with the introduction. You'll hear from me briefly, and then an introduction from Debra Giusti. Here we go with Marianne. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Awakening World. I'm Love Coach Scott Catamas, and this is a really special edition of the Awakening World. And of course, with us is our special guest, Marianne Williamson, and two amazing co-hosts, my dear friends, Debra Giusti and Amadora. You know, this whole Global Peace Tribe began when the pandemic hit, and Debra and I started providing programming so that we could stay connected and stay inspired. And one of our very first guests that really helped launch it was Marianne Williamson. And so here we are, 4 years later, 2 presidential campaigns later. And we're really blessed to have Marianne with us. And to get us off to a good start, Debra is going to lead us in a prayer.
Yes, hello everyone. Glad to have you here. And definitely we want to open up sacred space together because these gatherings are extremely sacred, especially with Marianne here, and everything she does is sacred, even running for office. So I'm going to start with a prayer. I invite us, first of all, to come into our hearts, to come deep into our souls and become very present. Very grateful to be together now and receive this wonderful transmission from Marianne. We know truly as we unite together in common visions of healing this nation through living our values of kindness and care towards each other, standing strong in our truth, and most of all, sharing the love, we see this vision fulfilled. We give so much gratitude for this opportunity of what we're about to receive now, as well as our connection together. I invite us all to utilize this inspiring experience to fortify us all to continue to go forward in the world and make a positive difference. And most of all, continue to share the love. And may this love go out through the world, and so be it. And first of all, I'd love to welcome you, Marianne, with so much love and gratitude from the Global Peace Tribe, because as you know, we consider you our family. So many of us have followed you for decades and decades, learning from you, being on mission with you, and through these amazing evolutionary times. But for those of you who are not aware, she's the author of 15 books, 4 of which have become New York bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers. In 1989, she founded the Project Angel Food, which is a nonprofit organization that has delivered more than 16 million meals to ill and dying homebound patients. It was created as a response to HIV/AIDS and has served millions since then. And as well as being a top spiritual teacher, she has used her career and worked on poverty, anti-hunger, and racial reconciliation issues. In 2004, she co-founded the Peace Alliance, which supported the creation of the U.S. Department of Peace, and so much more. And oh yeah, she ran for Congress. And oh yeah, she's run for president now twice. And oh yeah, she's now published another book. I consider you, Marianne, one of the most important women of our time. To me, she's a modern Mother Teresa. She's Mother Mary, and she's Joan of Arc, all in one. The intelligence and the passion and the undying commitment you share is unprecedented, and it all comes from a spiritual source, because the bottom line of your teachings is love. And doesn't it make sense that the highest offices that lead our country should be highly evolved spiritually, even as a requirement? I salute the day, Marianne, when you do come into political power and can assist us at the major level that you know how to do. So I totally salute you for everything.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. That was so kind of you to say. Thank you.
And as you might expect, this is not your traditional interview. These are your peeps who understand what you say and what you share. So I'd love for you to share, first of all, what is at the top of your heart that we, your army behind you, that's on your mission, need to know about the presidential campaign, about what's going on in the world that's so intense and critical, how to support you, just what's at the top of your heart that you can share now. Thank you so
Well,
much.
I think what's at the top of my heart is what's at the top of everybody's heart right now. I don't know anyone who's not deeply concerned, obviously, about the state of the world. I don't think I have anything you need to know. I do think we all have questions that we need to be asking. I think we aren't receiving deep answers because we're not asking deeper questions at this time. You know, you were so generous in your introduction. I'm certainly not Mother Mary, Mother Teresa, or Joan of Arc. However, I do think I'm a decent woman, and I try my best, and I'm really no better or worse than anyone else. But what I saw in running for president was the incredible resistance of the political establishment and of the media establishment to anyone who isn't coloring within the lines of the particular box that they have imposed on our society. And so for people like us, for instance, everything in your opening video, that you and I, you know, we've been at this stuff for decades. Some of you, I see Manuel Herrera. I mean, we've known each other for decades, literally. And all of us, whether we have met or not, we've all been reading these books. We've all been part of this for decades. So that so many of the deeply humanitarian, spiritually based perspectives that to us are by now like, well, of course, that's where the human race needs to be. I learned running for president that the system that dominates the social and economic order in our country and to some extent around the world doesn't want to hear any of that. And it doesn't mind if we have Zoom calls, and it doesn't mind if we write books, and it doesn't mind if we have sweet organizations. But when we do anything from that kind of radical humanitarianism and love for life and wishing for a more expansive, heart-filled perspective and embrace of the world, that does challenge our economic order. And they are, to put it quite mildly, vicious. And I think that we have two choices. We can do pretty much what we have been doing, which is just kind of, you know, I've had this conversation with so many people over the last few decades. There has been this way in which those of us involved in a spiritual journey have kept it very non-political because politics is so toxic. Well, I'm not here to tell you that it's not as toxic as you might think. It's much more toxic than you can even imagine. I think there's a word beyond toxic. It's a dirty game. It's a psychological blood sport. It's dark and it's corrupt. However, you know, it's of course a miracle says you can't bring the light to the darkness. You have to bring the darkness to the light. When Gandhi was asked, "How can you be part of politics? It's so you're so religious. How can you be part of politics?" He said, "Is not politics a part of Dharma too?" And he also said that politics should be sacred. And we all know that by that he didn't mean doctrinaire or dogmatic. He meant it has to do with the place that we're coming from. So I really, this time, man, you know, when I ran 4 years ago, they were satisfied to just treat me like I was a joke. Because to them, people like everything we're talking about here tonight is a joke. So they were satisfied to just do that. This time they were not amused and they really came at me. However, what I saw is that even though that system is more corrupt than any of us could possibly fear or imagine in a way, the people are so wonderful. And I think really that's everything like in the opening video. That's true in this country, and I think it's true around the world. The people are not the problem. But the gap between what's in our hearts and what everyone yearns for and the political, economic, and social realities are so great. And I think closing that gap to a great extent will determine whether or not the earth will even be habitable for human beings in another 100 years. Mm-hmm. So I don't have, that's nothing that you need to know. But I just believe that it's a question that we need to live with. One of my favorite books is Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. And he says, if you have a difficult question, and you don't have the answer yet, you have to just live with the question. Wisdom has to marinate sometimes. I can tell you from having run for president, there are no easy answers. The situation is all locked up, but so is slavery, and so is the institutional suppression of women, and so was segregation, but our ancestors unlocked it. And I also think it's important to remember, in the abolitionist movement, there were pretty much two separate categories, the white abolitionists and the black abolitionists. Among white people, the abolitionist movement emerged in large part from the early evangelical churches in New Hampshire. And then among the suffragists, among the women suffragists, many of them were religious Quakers. It was a religious principle for them that there is an inner light that makes all of us equal. And of course, Dr. King was a Baptist preacher. So I have said for a long time, for years I've been talking about the fact that those of us who are in the religious and spiritual worlds are the last people who should be sitting out those great political questions, because if you have a clue as to what changes one heart, you're the one who has a clue as to what would change the world. So I hope that I did succeed in opening up a space. I heard someone say, in fact, it was Dennis Kucinich who once told me, every campaign has a success of some kind. And I hope that even if it's a shift in our attention, there's no spiritual or religious path anywhere that gives any of us a pass on addressing the suffering of other sentient beings. And politics, in many, many cases, is about whether or not people suffer. I mean, if you have over 1 million people rationing their insulin, 1 in 4 living with medical debt, 68,000 Americans who die every year from lack of health care, or obviously the wars around the world. We're talking about human suffering. We're talking about climate change. We're talking about whether or not our grandchildren will find the world habitable. So the answers aren't easy, but I hope that we can all just open our hearts. No, you know what? Our hearts are open. Open our minds to just an openness to take on the bigger questions of our collective experience as well as our individual transformation.
Thank you so much, Marianne. As you're speaking, other questions came up for me. And when you said we need to bring the darkness to the light, right? Can you speak a little bit more on for those of us that are like, we want to lead as love. You're such a courageous leader in this open mind of love that I also want to go deeper with you around the title of your book and what that really means to you. But how do we start in our own spheres of influence to bring the darkness to the light?
Well, it's a line in the Course in Miracles. You can't bring the light to the darkness. You have to bring the darkness to the light. Look at a physical detox. The stuff has to come up in order to be let out. That's why people talk about a spiritual bypass. You can't just pour pink paint over your stuff. You have to look at your darkness. You have to, like in AA, you have to admit your character defects. Well, that's true of the nation. Whether it's genocide of Native Americans or slavery or systemic racism or economic imperialism or military imperialism, we're living in a time people are getting it. But the thing now is, there are people in the United States who don't want to look at anything America has done wrong. It's just like with personal transformation. Let's live in complete denial that I have any weaknesses, that I have any character flaws. Not going to look at that, right? So there are people like that about America. Remember, we've never done anything wrong. We don't have to look there. But then there are other people in this country who only want to look at what America has done wrong. They won't accept any of the ways that we've done a lot right, too. And that the real story of America is the struggle between the two, which has been personified in every generation. I mean, you had 56 people sign the Declaration of Independence, establishing these notions of radical, earth-changing possibilities of equality. And even there, 41 of the 56 were slave owners. So we've always been that dichotomy. But I think in terms of healing a country, we have to be like we are as people, with our friends, in therapy or whatever. You know, when you're talking about what you've done wrong, you need somebody there to say you didn't do everything wrong. Just like, you know, when you're so up on yourself, you're probably blessed by friends or counselors who say, well, you didn't do everything right. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think that for a nation to heal, just like an individual, you have to bring the darkness to the light. He says in the Course in Miracles, in terms of personal transformation, he says, I cannot take from you what you will not release to me. So even on a societal level, we do have to look at some of the things in our past and in our present that deeply need to change. One of the reasons I felt strongly about becoming president was I felt that I could compassionately, wisely, and soberly help America look in the mirror. I think that people are ready to do that, but at the same time, we can't just dwell in self-hatred. We've done a lot that's right, too. And this is one of those areas where the things that we've learned about personal transformation are the exact same pieces of information that need to be applied to societal change. Okay, we're going to have to look at this. We can't be in denial about this. We have to make amends where we need to make amends. We need to atone. We need to make restitution. But we also have to do it because we love ourselves or because we love our country. And that is an example to me of why people with this kind of a spiritual transformational perspective are so necessary now. The politics that we live that dominate our system today are old transactional models left over from a very mechanistic, rationalistic way of thinking and being and doing. This is the 21st century, far more holistic, far more whole person. People are interested in looking at root causes as well as symptoms. And your younger generation, you know, Gen Z people weren't even born in the 20th century. Or if they were born there, it was just to learn to walk. You know, they're not 20th century people. It would be so interesting to me when I would be talking to audiences, if I'm talking to young people, they'll ask a question about antidepressants and then a question about Syria. And to them, that's not odd. You know, so that was where the connection was, because to me, that both and is very natural. And it's very natural to our young people as well.
I hear you speaking of this need to midwife people through this transitional period with compassion, where it's not black and white thinking all good, all bad. It's really finding that middle way of unity consciousness, which holds the dark and amplifies the love in the dark. So I really thank you for the difference you're making. Like you said, there's no campaign that ever goes to waste. You're touching so many beings with your
thank you. Thank you. You know, one of the things that they talk about is making a just transition. We need to make a transition from a war economy to a peace economy and from a dirty economy to a clean economy. But what does it mean when you say we have to make a just transition? That's very important. What it means is there are thousands of people in this country who pay their rent and put food on the table for their children, working for industries that represent a world that needs to pass away, whether it's oil, big oil. You can't just say, okay, we're going to go green now. What about the thousands of people who make a living in businesses related to an old way of energy production? Well, you have to take into account their technological skill, their research skill, their manufacturing skill can make a lateral move, but you can't have, okay, we're going to change now. And that's why you need leaders who represent that nobody's going to fall through the cracks here. We're going to make this historic change on the planet. The Course in Miracles says it's not up to you what you learn. It's merely up to you whether you learn through joy or through pain. And I think at this point that's true of this country and of the species. Some things are going to change. You're going to either do it through pain or through wisdom. One world is dying, one world is being born. We need to be death doulas to a world that's passing away and birth doulas to a world that's coming forth. But we have to be very emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually sober and careful, because human beings, this is human beings who are experiencing all this. This is not just a Zoom call. This is not just the up here that we've all been involved with. If you look at the Christian cross and you also look at the Star of David, they both represent visually the intersection of the two worlds, the divine and the human, the vertical and the horizontal, and bringing those two together with real respect for life.
Yeah,
That's where it's all about right now.
Divine Mother principle comes in, because she's not this detached sky god, right? She's here within us. And that for me feels like the awakening of the heart. So Scott, I know you have another question, but yeah, thank you, Marianne.
Well, Marianne, you talked about the books on our shelf. And I think for many of us, A Return to Love was right there between Autobiography of a Yogi and Be Here Now.
That's a real honor. Thank you.
And you have a new book, which I just received and have started to read. And several of our people in the chat box have talked about how they're, reading it and receiving it. Please tell us about the Mystic Jesus. And I think my opening question about the book is your own personal inspiration to talk about.
Mike?
Before we go to the Mystic Jesus, I think it would be fun to get some feedback, because she just kind of had her whole, the part of the conversation about her experience of being in the political world. And so I'd love to hear from some of you what that might have triggered for you, some of your thoughts. How did her campaign make a difference? Whatever comes up. So I'll of course start with my good buddy Omashar. Omashar, what came up for you in this first part of her conversation? And other than what I share, raise your hand. Let's interact a little bit here.
Exactly. And I it's funny because I was watching it as if I'd never seen it before. And I watched the original transmission of it intently. But there's things that she's saying, and she was talking about the darkness that she's had to witness in her campaign. But what really stood out for me was that why are we looking at all the negative things that America has done to the world when there is a gazillion beautiful, positive things that America, United States has done for the world? And I think that is just testament to typically how we exist here as human beings, because for some reason we might have had a beautiful day. 99% of the day may be beautiful, and 1% comes in with gray clouds and it bums everything out. And then we focus on that only. And and so what came from this first part of the Marianne video is how amazing the United States actually has been across time to change things. And it's unfortunate that we are such short-memoried and that we look at only the negative. I mean, that's paraphrasing, but
Yeah, I mean, when I grew up, America was the good guys. We were the ones who defeated Nazi Germany. We collaborated with England and France, and but we kind of came in. England was barely hanging on, and we came in and turned the tide of the war. And so I grew up as a boy believing we were the good guys. And then when I was 8 years old, John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And of course, I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew that it was a big thing. And then a few years later, Martin Luther King was assassinated. His brother Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. And those assassinations really impacted me. All three really impacted me in a big way. I was 8 years old when John Kennedy was killed, 12 when Martin Luther King was killed, and when Bobby Kennedy was killed. And this disillusionment started taking place in my perception of America. And then, as I've matured into an adult and studied, it's like, oh my God, we, in some ways, have become the bad guys in certain areas. There are certain things we've done that's just really.
Well, it's very true. And the way I was brought up in the United Kingdom was so anti-American, you would not believe. And nothing about the wonderful things that have sprouted out of America. I'm using the word United States because America, there's three Americas. There's, South, Middle, and North. And it wasn't until I started traveling, and I traveled to Australia and spent a few months there, and I met all these American people from the United States, and they were absolutely beautiful. It took meeting, as she said, the people of the country and not the overshadow, the news media and the politics of the country. Because as a nation, the United States are full of beautiful people. The majority of us are awesome.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
on that note, I'll pass it to somebody else.
Well, and what I like that Marianne said, she didn't go into the polarization, which would, again, make her my kind of person I want as president. It was like, hey, we have to confront the parts of our history that are shadow. And we also have to remember the good. My favorite coach, Phil Jackson, said when a player is playing poorly is when I remind him how wonderful and what a great player he is. When he's playing well, I remind him that he can do better. It's kind of like that. I'm going to read some comments that have come into the chat box. And if anybody wants to come on camera and speak, raise your hand. Susan writes, why does it seem like we are so powerless to elect a person of our choice? Right? I mean, let's face it, I don't think anybody on this call is excited about Biden or Trump. In fact, I would guess that most people are going to be voting against one of them as opposed to voting for one of them. Curious to hear from any of you about that. Susan also wrote, there were several assassinations in a short period of time. Susan continuing, I thought her words about the nation going through the same thing as personal transformation was important for us spiritual people. Yeah, that's right, Susan. Good point. Sylvia writes, the invitation to go beyond individualism, to thinking collectively and to do a recovery program collectively, an inventory of strengths and weaknesses in one framing of the 12 steps as part of that process, spoke loudly and deeply to me. Thank you, Sylvia. Anybody else? Do we have a shy group tonight? No?
You wrote.
Jeffrey.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Jeffrey and then Ayana.
Okay. Well, of course, we have the solution. It's Levolution. But and what she was talking about is, is the easy way and the hard way. We can use wisdom. And we're all looking at, with any kind of open mind that this is unsustainable with the direction we're going in, and that means there's going to be a lot of suffering and a lot of and it's only going to get worse, as far as sustainability on resources and how we're treating the planet. And of course, everywhere I go, I see such optimism of people waking up, like at the Awakening World. And of course, we have the Peace Week and 99 Days of Peace and Unity. And my most optimistic and powerful thing that I know is that underneath, there's a process, a learning process, a feedback. I call it levolution, but it's actually the universe is learning by a feedback mechanism. Now, that's just not my opinion. That's how the universe works, because as you know, I'm a big fan of unified physics and what's going on over at the International Space Federation. Now, where there's a lot of resistance, this science that they're writing right now could make our suffering so much less. We're on the brink of some major breakthroughs that are like gravity control and getting the 0-point energy source, which seems to be quite prevalent with other members in the galaxy. When they come to visit, they do not come in rocket ships with, burning fossil fuels to get here. They have another kind of technology, which is in the nature of who we really are, and that's the field. We are in the field, we are the field, and that's what connects us to each other and to everything, because we're all part of that one. That's the unity consciousness that we're talking about. And that's also the reality in the physics that we're writing. It's a unity consciousness physics. It's a whole, and so anyhow, that gives me even greater hopes that we can reduce the suffering that we're bringing upon through the way we treated our lack of wisdom, I guess, in how we treated the resources that were given to us, God's gift, the divine gift of this planet, the spaceship Earth, that we all have to hold on to and protect so we can travel through the universe. So anyhow, that's my hope. I'm loving what they're, I really hope we can get this new science out and implemented. I know it just showed you, I was just watching, the Academy Awards movie, Oppenheimer. And of course, it showed the struggle with power and all that. We could take just a tad of the billions of dollars that resources that they spent there and put it into this new technology. We can make it a world that works for everybody. And I know that's what we're all here working on. So God bless you guys. And Scott, can't thank you enough for your work. And everyone here just inspires me. Thank you.
Thank you. We love you, Reverend Jeffrey. Thank you for that. All right, Ayada, then Christy, then Dawn.
Hey,
Hi, Ayada.
Scott, thank you so much for doing this. I missed the first time when she was speaking live, I rarely miss these
Yes.
groups, but something really important came up. And then something really important came up earlier today too, and I'm just now signing on. But so I'm catching up with you all. But a couple of things I want to say about Marianne, that she is such an important figure in these times, because she's what's the word? Oh yeah, Bucky Fuller's term, the trim tab, which is on the rudder of a large ship. It's that little tab that starts to turn the rudder slowly, and then the boat entirely turns. But that's the beginning. And she's kind of like the trim tab. She's not really out there in mainstream politics, at least not yet. She's doing it, but in terms of being accepted and embraced, she's got a fair way to go. But her voice is so important. And I've been fortunate enough to see her speak twice in person. And the first time was in about 2004 when she spoke at one of the MLK convocations. And this was like of an audience of 1,000 or 2,000 people. And she was talking about in the 60s and this bright vision that so many of us had. And it was just like the blossoming, the birthing of a new vision, a new possibility for America and for the world. And then I always remember this moment, and it's hard for me to talk about it without choking up, but because it was so powerful. But she said, and then they started killing us. And it was like the entire building, it was like everybody stopped breathing for a minute. And, we all sort of took in our breath. Eventually, it seemed like together. But the impact of that statement was so powerful. I mean, I grew up in Canada, so I knew about all these assassinations. But that was when it really hit me that how that movement of peace and compassion and love and freedom and all that really got, it didn't get stopped, but it really got slowed down with all those assassinations of about, 4 very important people at that time. And so that's kind of the game that we're in. That's the territory that we're in. It's really serious and it's really demanding. But we prevailed, and our generation opened up a lot of new things. Our generation really brought in rights for women, for children, for animals. We brought in the environmental movement, just the peace movement. So many things that did happen in spite of all of that. And so that takes me to the second point, which is kind of the similar. She said the situation now is so locked up. There are no easy situations, but so was slavery. And she mentioned a number of other things. And I just feel that's such an important awareness for us all to be holding now. When my parents went through World War II, lived through that fear and terror, and good eventually did prevail. And it was through the efforts of so many people who stood up and gave it everything they had that it turned in the right direction. And that's where we're still at, or at again. And so I just encourage everybody to really remember that no matter how dark it gets, we still can act, we still can take action and make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayada. Beautifully stated. Yeah, it's true. I studied with Al Gore back in 2009, 2010. I became a climate change presenter. And he talked a lot about the incredible, once America was on board for the war effort in World War II, there's a lot of resistance. Most Americans did not want to get involved in the war in Europe. And the majority of Americans didn't want to get involved. And it wasn't until Pearl Harbor was attacked that everything kind of turned around. And then America was like on board all the way. And there was this incredible national purpose that took place during World War II. And Gore's fantasy dream, if he had become president, was to make that our national purpose, not war, but to really all do everything necessary to change our relationship to the environment, to the climate, to planet Earth. And imagine if there was a focus on clean energy and cleaning up the planet. If we had the same level of commitment that we had during World War II to win that war, and the statistics are staggering, how quickly we produced the necessary tanks and ships and planes. It was extraordinary focused attention. Imagine if we could do that for raising consciousness and for cleaning up the planet. Okay, we're going to go to Christy Michaels, and then we're going to go to Don Drake. You're up, Christy.
Hey, Scott. First off, I want to thank you, Scott, because, you had invited Eden Amadora to be in hosting with you on this and asking questions. And she emanated such a profound, energetic of an embodied Divine Mother energy, which has been really lacking. As you well know, I've been very passionate about the divine feminine work that I do and other people. But I was sitting in meditation one morning, and in my meditation, I always ask for guidance and whatnot. And I heard, go to Marianne Williamson's website. And I went, oh, okay. I hadn't been there for a while. This was years ago. And up popped her conference flyer of the Sister Giant conference. She had several Sister Giant conferences, and I grabbed my daughter and we flew down to LA to go to it. And it was about 500 women from all over the United States. And when we arrived at the conference room, a big, huge hotel conference room, we were greeted by a bank of computers, and we had to go in because she wanted all the women to know who were their representatives. And a lot of the women didn't know just basic things about who their senator or their House of Representative person was. And so she got everybody informed on that. And then the first night she did it was on witch burning. And she said that, and she had one of the top scholars from UCLA on witch burning at Salem come and speak to us. And she threaded all the ways that the witch burning subtly impacted our unconscious, and was still actually in the languaging. And they gave many, many examples of how we are still being burned. We're still being tortured. And, you know, she talked about how vicious it was when she was out there confronting the patriarchy and everything. And it was a powerful conversation about the witch burning. And then the second night, she showed the documentary. I'm loving what you and Lori are doing on these documentary films, because that one on, I forget the name of it, Scott, you'll have to tell me again, Our Country, God.
God and Country.
Yeah, on the rise of white nationalism, which is basically trying to convince the American people that Jesus wants us to go to war. It's so insane.
They literally have posters of Jesus holding an automatic weapon.
Yeah. And so, you know, and of course, it's the divine feminine in harmony and balance with the divine masculine is not going to allow for that. It's the coming together around ideas of peace and love and compassion. But anyway, she showed the documentary Angels with Iron Jaws. And if you haven't seen that documentary, it's so important. I would recommend you guys share it one time. It's the story of the 20 women who got us our right to vote. And we won our right to vote by one senator whose mother called him up and said, listen, if you don't vote for my ability to vote, don't ever come home for Sunday dinner. And so he finally conceded out of the pressure of his mother to give up his position and vote for us to have our right. But we still don't have equal rights for amendment for women, even though everything was met, all the requirements were met, and we still don't have it. And that's insane. Like, it's really okay that a woman has the same job as a man and she's not paid an equal amount of money for the same work. And among other things that it would provide for us, just the acknowledgement of our equality as spirit, as human beings. We're equal as human beings, for Christ's sake. And then the third night was on Pray the Devil Back to Hell, which is a fascinating story about the Liberian Peace Women's movement and how the act of prayer of women coming together, joining forces. It was Christian women and Muslim women sat down in the town square, and they just held a vigil of an intention for peace. And that's it was produced by Walt Disney's daughter, Abigail Disney. And it tells the story about how these women overthrew a brutal dictator in Liberia and ended up getting the first woman president for the country of Liberia. But it shows the power of intention. It shows that when we come together as a unified, that's why I always show up at the Global Peace Tribe, because I think that what you are doing, and Debra and everybody here who's going, it is the truth. It is what we need to do. It is how we can join using, like Lynn Tabbert's, skills of intention, and all the other wonderful things. So anyway, Marianne has been a godsend because she's opened the conversation and gotten people. And, you think about it, they now estimate that 9 million women throughout Europe and the United States were burned at the stake. You don't think that didn't have an impact on shutting us up? Well, Marianne said that's what happened. It shut us up.
Yep, that's right.
And so as she
Right.
wanted us to look at it so that we can begin to let go of that trauma, which is being passed down generation. So I'll just end with this. I went home and my cousin is a genealogy nut. And he's written this really fat book about my grandfather and all the line going back, who had sex with who and how many children and all this stuff. He asked me, what are you? Well, he had emailed me and he said that he finally traced our family back to Salem to the witch burnings. So I had a woman through my grandmother's line that was standing there watching one of the relatives being burned at the stake. So you wonder why I'm a crazy woman about some of this stuff and so passionate. It's in my DNA there's something about that was passed down of the social justice thread that is so critical that I've been trying to bring to light and do my piece. So thank you, Scott. I really appreciate you having Eden on and letting the presence of the Divine Mother, as she holds it is a really beautiful emanation.
Thank you.
Be as a contrast to, like, yes, we need this compassionate mother energy. Anyway, thank you, dear.
Thank you, Christy. And I want to acknowledge you. And, you have also really carried the torch for the Divine Feminine and for Mary Magdalene and all that you do to help raise consciousness about. And now it's becoming like, when you first started doing the Mary Magdalene work, it was like, oh, yeah. And now it's like everybody's talking about Mary Magdalene,
Yeah.
And so I do appreciate the great work you've done with all that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate all the support you've given me because you've
More to
often
come.
given me the platform to
More to
speak.
come.
So it's very wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I'm delighted now to see lots of hands are going up. So this is exciting. And there's some great comments to share in the audience. So I'm going to read a few comments. I'm then going to go to Dawn, then Marianne, then George, and Jennifer. But since I talked about we talked briefly about the Christian nationalist movement, I'm not joking. Here is the t-shirt that they're selling at the rallies for Trump. Jesus, Trump, Guns, and Liberty. And here is a poster from one of those rallies.
Oh, Jesus, cool.
I mean, isn't that, they basically took Rambo, it's Rambo's body, and they've put Jesus's head on Rambo's body.
Yeah, so not true.
So, what she was referencing is we've been showing these films, many of you have been coming, about how Trump got elected, which is two things that he did. He learned how to manipulate social media, and he utilized social media far better than Hillary did to find people that are isolated and to convince them that she was bad and that he was good. So there's that, and he made friends with the far right Christian evangelist movement. And he promised them, if you get me to be president, I will stack the Supreme Court in such a way that we will overturn Roe versus Wade, which most people thought would never be done. And so he is a hero to anti-abortion activists and all these far-right Christian churches. He is the savior. He did the impossible. He overturned Roe versus Wade. And so they overlook all the obvious personality flaws and literally believe that he has been appointed by Jesus to, do this great work. It's eye-opening. It's like, oh, wow. Now, we try not to get too political on this show, so I'm not going to go further than that, but I do want to share that with all of you. Here's a few comments, and then we're going to go to Dawn. Angela S., one of my absolute favorite members of our audience, writes, Now, mind you, Karen is a woman of color. She writes, I also was 8 when Kennedy was killed. And the main thing I remember about that day was how many grown-ups were crying. Same, Karen. I remember my 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Gallup, was just in tears. I'll never forget that. By the time Martin Luther King was assassinated, this is Karen still talking, I was 12 and had just helped integrate a school in Louisiana. I was afraid to go to school the next day because I didn't know how I would be treated. That period was fundamental in my becoming the person I am today. Imagine being a 12-year-old Black girl in Louisiana when Martin Luther King was assassinated. Karen, wow. Drina Joy writes, change is happening despite all the challenges. One sign is that more women presidents and heads of states globally. US has an active vice president. Mexico has a newly elected president. Finland has had 4 female prime ministers and or presidents, and she's attaching a global map of the female-led countries. Okay, and here is that map. Much more enjoyable to look at than Jesus with a gun. So there you go. The yellow are countries that has had at least 1 female head of government. Pink is 2. Light purple, like India, is 3. Dark purple, like that looks like Sweden, is 4. And I don't see any super dark ones. Oh, there's one little tiny dark one here. God, what country is that in between Spain and France and Italy? Luxembourg, maybe? Okay. Thank you, Tarina Joy. Getting a little geography lesson there. I'm going to read 2 more comments and then we're going to go to Dawn. Dia is going to talk a little bit later if we have time, if not tonight, another time, about the 12,000-year magnetic 90-degree pole shift named excursion, documented to at least 72,000 years. Yeah, that kind of fits in probably with the Kochi prophecy about how the planet's going to change. Ayada says, Scott, you are right. We can do this if and when we focus and align. Finally, T. Joy, and I'll get to the other comments later on. T. Joy writes, more divine feminine energy is rising up. We desperately need this expression everywhere in everything we do. We all must support the efforts in correcting this entire planetary imbalance. You're right, I agreed. All right, I'm going to go to hear from some of you. I'm going to ask, since we're now having a great conversation, please keep your comments to like 60 to 90 seconds, one topic, okay? 60 to 90 seconds, one thought. I know that he'll do a great job of modeling it for us. The great Don Drake, my former roommate. Hey, Don. You got to unmute.
Yep. Thank you. Really great to be here tonight. I just am really enjoying the energy of this group. There's so much heart here. And I just wanted to mention that I really wanted to tune in to hear Marianne talk about the mystic, Jesus the mystic. And the reason why is because, and I love the comment that you made, Scott, about her book, Return to Love, being between Be Here Now and Autobiography of a Yogi. I mean, it truly was in those days. But Marianne is a mystic. She's clearly a mystic. Her heart is open, but she's also a very grounded mystic. And like most mystics, she's gone through a lot of personal suffering, particularly in the political grind mill that she's been through in the last few years. And so I just wanted to say I'm here to support and appreciate her. And also she's a wonderful example of the divine feminine coming through not only female bodies like hers, but it's also coming through the men in this group, the men who are showing up here tonight. We have a lot of Shakti, we have a lot of heart, and I'm just really glad to be here. And I'm looking forward to hearing part 2 of her recording. Thank you.
Fantastic. We will get back to her shortly. And thank you, Don. It's good to see. Hey, isn't it good to see Don? You're looking pretty chipper, partner.
I am chipper. I'm an untethered soul now. I'm
I
not
saw where
not
you're doing
living
a road
anywhere.
trip.
Yes, and so it's doing my heart well to be on the road and go different places. And while I can, I will. So
Where are you
yes,
tonight?
I'm actually up on Cobb Mountain, not far from where we used
Oh,
to live,
yeah.
and spent a little time at Harvin today and soaking in the amazing magical pools and the energy of that land is just I can't believe how awesome it is. And so anyway, that's where I am now, and I'll keep everybody abreast as I move from place to place.
Well, it's great to see, it's really wonderful when we help raise money and pray for people to see them doing well.
Yes.
Like Eleanor Joy is back with us dancing tonight. You're looking well. Now let's keep those prayers going, everybody, for Piper Dellums. And in
Piper
fact,
Dellums, yes.
we're going to do a special fundraising night. Kristen Hoffman and I are organizing it. Omashar will be there, of course. And it's going to be a special evening just to support Piper Dellums, and that's coming up. We'll schedule it for sometime in July, probably a Friday night or a Sunday. All right, we're going to go to George. You're next, George. What do you want to share?
Okay.
Hi, George, you're up.
Yeah, I've listened to the last couple of presentations, the movies that Zoe Grace has done, and it seems to me that we're not all on the same page. We have very different understandings of what's going on. And you'll see by the note that I just submitted that I've gotten information that contradicts the favorable view that Zoe has of I guess by associating Trump with expressing her concerns about Trump and Clinton, that leaves Biden and Harris as the preferred candidates. And while I like the greenness, I certainly haven't appreciated the provocative behavior seizing 300 billion of Russian bonds. And now that's been upgraded, I'm understanding that it's going to be confiscated. The U.S. is actually going to spend that money, the 300 billion that was Russian money. And it also I've seen the video clips of missile strikes, U.S. missiles striking and destroying the Nord Stream pipeline. It conveys Russian gas to Europe, Germany. You might not know. I didn't realize it was far north of Canada. They really need the gas and they need heating fuel there. So my information came from some of the wealthy newsletter writers, multimillionaire, billionaire, all Republicans, of course, and anti-Biden for the most part. But because of Jim Rickards' insider associations, he's the one who created Project Prophecy, which enabled our intelligence forces to prevent airline bombing back when that was a thing. It was happening regularly. They could see that the stock markets of certain airlines were taking a hit before when an airline was about to be targeted. And so the CIA could look closely, and they caught quite a few would-be airline bombers that way. And because of his CIA and the Pentagon contacts, he is the person who actually showed the video footage of the U.S. Striking with the missiles and breaking the Nord Stream pipeline.
Oh,
It's something none of us know for the
so
most part.
George, maybe if what you could do, thank you for alerting us to that. Please put the link to where we can read about that into the chat box. I need to move on to the next
The
person.
link.
But if there's a link, usually there's a URL to the story or the article. If you must have heard it from somewhere on a podcast or you read it
I
somewhere?
can't do that. This is
Oh.
paid. This is a paid newsletter.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for notifying us. Thank you. Thank you. And a reminder, everybody, try and keep it to 60 to 90 seconds and one significant thought. I'm going to go to Marianne next. Hello, Marianne.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for choosing me. I'm very
Yeah.
happy to talk about Marianne. I'm a student of hers. She is teaching the Course in Miracles. She gives this course for $65 a year, and she teaches daily lessons on how to shift our minds from fear to love. And it's really interesting how this course works. She has a way of reading it and then giving her life experience on how she relates to the book. I will say that this book has been a life savior for me. I practiced this course. I've been doing it for 6 years, and it's only until I studied with Marianne Williamson that I understood it, and that now I'm able to apply it in my life. So she is a mystic. She is first and foremost a teacher of love and how to stay away from fear, just really snap out of it. And so I recommend everybody take this course. It's $65 a year. And every day you get a lesson from Marianne Williamson, and she'll teach you to love.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting us know about that, Marianne. When she's been on the show previously, that's what she promoted was her course. And so, because she's been on my show, I think 7 or 8 times over the last 4 years. And I do remember her promoting that course. So thank you. And it's $50 for 365 days of Marianne starting your day.
It's $65.
What's gone up? It was 50 when we promoted it before.
It talks about Jesus. This course is written by a medium who downloaded Jesus talking. So it does talk about forgiveness. It's all about forgiveness and how, we can courageously forgive the unforgivable, So anyway, I recommend this course, and she's the best mystic in the world. She really is.
And we're going to learn all about the mystic Jesus coming up. So
okay, I haven't read the book. I'll buy it.
That's what we're going to hear from next. Jennifer and Grace Denise, I do want to get back to Marianne. Perhaps you can put your thoughts and comments into the chat box, or I'll call on you guys next. But let's go back to Marianne for a little bit. And I'm loving the dialogue. I'm loving that people are getting involved here. So let's now hear what Marianne has to say about her newest book, The Mystic Jesus. Jesus, or the Christ consciousness, and what that meant to you.
Well, I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, and the Course in Miracles is a Christ-centered teaching. It's not a religion. It does use traditional Christian terms, but in decidedly non-traditional psychotherapeutic ways. I have never felt that to be the word disciple and the word discipline come from the same root, disciplining your mind to perceive with love in a world that will constantly tempt you to perceive without love. That is what it means to be a disciple, because that's what it means to be disciplined. And the Course in Miracles says that the students of all this come from all religions and no religion, and that's certainly been my experience. It was about 5 years ago, I think, maybe even a little bit longer, that I was called by my publisher. This is the first time I've ever had this experience where I was asked by them. They said that in the publishing world, there are many people who ask for books about Jesus that don't want particularly for this to be tied to the dogma or the doctrine of the Christian religion. And so my publisher asked me if I'd like to do that. And I felt, as a student of the Course in Miracles, the Jesus, as Jesus is represented in the Course in Miracles, how he is seen in the Course in Miracles, I found it daunting. but I was excited as well. Not long after that, I decided to run for president. So I said, I'd like to postpone this for a while. And I wrote a book called Politics of Love, which was talking about my political beliefs and all this. And then it had to be postponed again for the same reason. And finally, you know, they're like, we need to get this book out. So it is the metaphysical Jesus. You know, in traditional Christianity, it says that Jesus is the line God created only one begotten Son. In the Course in Miracles, the only one begotten Son refers to the idea that there is only one of us here, that God only created one of us. And the Course in Miracles says, you are like sunbeams thinking you are separate from other sunbeams. You are like waves in the ocean thinking you are separate from other waves. But it's just a false belief. It's a hallucination that you are separate. The truth is that you are one with the ocean. The truth is that you are one with the sun, with the sunlight. The Course in Miracles says Jesus is someone, and it also says he is not the only one, but he is someone who lived on the earth, and his consciousness actualized that understanding. The Course in Miracles says light is understanding. The enlightened ones are those who understand. So the Course in Miracles says he lived on the earth. He thought only the thoughts of heaven, heaven being the awareness of our oneness with all living things, or unity consciousness, as it is said here. And the idea that we've all heard in the Bible, heaven and earth shall become as one, means that our evolutionary destiny, the human race, is to live on the earth, but there will be no gap between earth and heaven, heaven being an awareness of oneness. And it says that Jesus is someone who, having achieved that state, now has the authority, should we request it, because if we don't request it, it would be a violation of our free will for that power to impose itself or to overshadow our minds. But should we request it, as the Course in Miracles says, he says, my mind joined with your mind can shine away the ego. So that's the Jesus I'm talking about in that book. And I hope that people find it meaningful.
We have a related question. A lot of questions are coming in from the audience. This is from Tess Kempner. The Course in Miracles says we're either coming from love or we are coming from fear. How do we reconcile this with fear of the unwanted future that we are seeking to avert? As Einstein said, we cannot solve the problems that the Bubbler has created. How do we transcend the problems while continuing to point to them and seeking to vanquish them? Is our attention then misdirected?
So the Course in Miracles says that love is to fear as light is to darkness. Darkness is not a thing. Darkness is the absence of a thing. You don't get rid of darkness by hitting it with a baseball bat. You turn on the light and the darkness is gone. Fear is simply a place where love is absent. You turn on the love, the fear is gone. Now, going back to what we were talking about with Eden, you can't get rid of fear by pushing it down. Jesus, so now let's go back to the Jesus thing. So the Course in Miracles says, millions of years in time as you know it, although in reality it never happened at all, because only love is real. So anything that was not loving was actually just a hallucination, because since only love is real, when you're not thinking with love, you're actually not thinking. But when that first non-loving thought was thought, which the Course in Miracles says was millions of years ago in time as we know it, that of itself is kind of mind-boggling. Love being perfect, God being love, being perfect has the answer to every problem the moment the problem occurs. So what would love do when we had a non-loving thought? Well, it's not going to force us back to love, because love would never force. But the Course says that in that moment, God created an alternative. He placed within our consciousness what is called an eternal communication link between God and his separated sons. So I'm in fear. I'm in fear about what's going to happen. So the Course in Miracles, the Course is a Trinitarian system. There's God, there's us, and the third, the connector, right? So here I'm living in this illusion, this world that is dominated by the thought system of fear. That's one universe, this gigantic illusion, Maya, right? Then there's the realm of God, in which none of the scary stuff is even happening because only love is real. But I'm so trained to think the thoughts of this scary world, I'm scared over here. So I say, God, I'm scared. That's what you do. You say, I am willing to see this differently. I'm scared. I'm scared of nuclear catastrophe. I'm scared of a biomedical disease that's going to wipe out the planet. I'm scared of terrorists. I'm scared of whatever the ways are that we could hit the iceberg. And, you know, within this world, they're real. So you say, I am willing to see this differently. And that's the role of the Holy Spirit, to help us change our perception. And that's what the miracle is. It's that shift in perception. The Course in Miracles says that because Jesus has fully actualized that consciousness, to call on Jesus is to call on the Holy Spirit. To call on the Holy Spirit is to call on Jesus. And then you look at these things differently and you go, okay, what's the worst that could happen? So the worst that could happen is that we so misuse this planet that the planet itself throws off the predator species. That's the worst that could happen. We're all going to die anyway. But that would be a horrible, horrible, horrible way for things to go, because it would cause immeasurable human suffering and other species suffering. So what's the next thought? Well, the next thought is that, as with every other problem, God has an answer. Next thought, what's the answer? You have a part to play in making the choice for a loving alternative as opposed to global destruction. The answer is for you to put all that you have and all that you are in God's hands and say, use me. Let me be, and the Course in Miracles says, those among us who have achieved the most on this planet have achieved a fraction of what all of us are capable of. So you become so involved in trying to be part of the solution that the problem, you know, hope comes, hope is born of being participating in hopeful solutions. You know, I noticed starting a long time ago, when I would be like giving $18 a month. Like my mother, I remember once, many years ago, my mother was visiting me. She comes into my bedroom and she sees I'm sitting on my bed. And I have all these like index card size things on my bed, like all lined up. And she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm deciding who I'm going to do my charitable giving this month to. And my mother says, what charitable giving? You don't have any money. What kind of charitable giving are you going to do? And I looked at my mother and I said, I don't understand what you're saying. I give $5 a month to that. I give $8 a month to that. I give $4 a month to that. And I remember I was giving a very small amount of money, but it was to an organization that helped with childhood leukemia. And every month when we would get, because we didn't have internet yet, we'd still be getting it in the mail, and I would read about the advances that were being made in defeating childhood leukemia. And because I was giving just a few dollars a month, I was like, I wasn't scared of it because I was part of the solution. I noticed that with AIDS also. I was very much an AIDS activist. And the people who were going, oh, this is so awful, were the people that weren't participating in helping. Those of us who were helping, you just don't live in that space. You're living in the space of the solution and bringing forth the solution. And there's no room. There's no room for anything else.
You, Marianne.
That is really good spot for us to stop for a minute.
Our perch of going all over the nation and really talking to people, talking to these people.
There we go. Yeah, I think that was really inspirational, and I want to get back to some of you because I'm really enjoying hearing from you. We're going to go to Charlotte in a moment. but I'm going to read what Dorina just wrote. Again, promoting the mystic Jesus. Dorina writes, Marianne says it very well at the end of the mystic Jesus. We came from love and shall return to love. There's no question this will happen after we die, but the bigger point is we can go there now. We don't have to wait until death to experience the deathless. Our eyes could be reopened right here, right now, unquote. So that was Marianne speaking, or a quote from Marianne. Now this is Dorina speaking. For me, I think and feel that it is not just a matter of if and whether, but also a matter of how many of us humans awake and how change and awaken and change and how fast. How can we assist and accelerate that beside our individual and collective return to being the love that we are? We do that by watching The Awakening World. That's what this show is all about. We are hopefully 100 little monkeys, right? You know, the 100th monkey understanding that the more we believe, the more we experience, the more our consciousness creates the new reality. A long time ago, I've known Michael Beckwith for 40 years. And a long time ago, he said to me, you know, don't worry about the old paradigm. It's going to fall apart. It'll naturally fall apart. Our job is to create the new world. And so I've always been interested in creating the new earth. And that's really, again, what the Awakening World is all about. So that's one way. I'm going to read a couple more comments. Yeah, George writes about the white, that Jesus was seen in both North and South America with indigenous tribes. There's a book by L. Taylor Hansen, a Stanford physical anthropologist, about that. That's going to be interesting. Ayada writes, oops. Where are you, Ayada? She says, that was so bang on. I would love to have that clip to watch over and over again. Ayada, I will, I'll try and make some clips for you. She's asking, any chance of some brief excerpts being made available? I find some of these gems are so important to remember and share with others. So many people are stressed and even despairing. You know, I have posted this now on our YouTube channel, Ayada. So I will put the link into the chat box while Charlotte is sharing her wisdom. And why don't you go through and pick out the clips and the blips that you think are best? Would you do that? I'm getting a yes from her. So where is Charlotte? If I was Charlotte, where would I be? Now you got to turn your camera on, Charlotte.
Jennifer.
Jennifer. We're going with Jennifer first. Where's Jennifer?
Right, there you go. See, that's why I put it in the full chat.
Oh. Hi. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Hi.
I was a little slow there. Omashar, once again, Omashar saved the day. If all of you only knew how many times Omashar saves my little butt.
He's a gift. We know that.
Hello, Jennifer.
Hi. Hi, I'm actually here with Charlotte. That's why you're confused.
I get it.
We're together in LA.
Together. All right.
They came for the Disclosure Fest.
Yes.
LA.
And it got canceled.
We started the show by showing the poster for Disclosure Fest and really encouraging everybody on Saturday at 2:22 p.m. to do the meditation together. And of course, I'm feeling so bad for my friend Adrian to put that festival together and to have to cancel it 2 days before. But one more time, Charlotte and Jennifer, who we are about to hear from, were on their way to this amazing event that was going to happen, a 3-day festival. It's now just been reduced to an online gathering. Let's all do that together at 2:22 p.m. And with that, I turn it back fully over to you, Jennifer.
I'll keep it really brief and then I'll hand it over to my sister. I had the privilege of actually seeing Marianne speak in Chicago at the Parliament of World Religions. And I can easily say that she is the smartest person I've ever seen speak. She was so bright and so vibrant and so inspiring off the cuff. She didn't have any speaking notes. It's so impressive of how her memory and how well read she is. But what came through, and I think, you know, you just on that last clip that you played, the thing that hit home that she said is, you know, when we're looking at social media and we're clicking on these things, it really looks like the world's going to hell in the handbasket based on the people that are active on social media, and that haters hate with conviction. And we have to remember that they are the minority, and that if we want love to win the day, that we have to love with conviction. And that was her big message and her big takeaway. And it was so inspiring. And I don't always know how to do that, but you know, I think that's really the thing, that, you know, the haters really are the minority. We're the majority. We have to love with conviction. And it was just exceptional to see her. And I think, you know, when we're only given two choices, and, you know, I'm from Canada, but it's very similar, that we're very much a two-party system here. You only have two choices to vote for. So it's automatically, the system is setting us up to be against each other. And, you know, when we really look at things and, you know, we think we're very different because we vote for people that are so different. And when it really comes down to it, at the end of the day, our needs and our wants are so much the same. Yeah. And, you know, if we can unplug and remember that and stop arguing our points and digging our heels into be on this side or that side, we can start to remember that we are all on the same side. We actually all want the same things, and our political leaders and the only two choices that we have, our political system has failed us. And really, at the end of the day, let's follow what Marianne says and love with conviction, and love will win the day. And I'm going to pass it over to Charlotte.
Thank you so much. Beautiful.
Thank you. Hi. Oh, don't put it like that. Wait. Oh my, yes, we're here in California. Does it work okay? Okay. And just to build on what Jennifer was saying, it was such an unexpected gift when we went to the Parliament of World Religions, and we were there supporting Pato and Antoinette's work, Adentia Stand Up for Justice, and the Ubuntu Project. And we just happened at the last minute to be able to get tickets for this Charter for Compassion dinner, where Marianne was the keynote. So this was a really unexpected gift for us. And as Jennifer said, this was a 3+ hour dinner with like global level speakers, philosophers, academics, each speech, each presentation more articulate and impactful than the one before that. And I was thinking as a speaker, like, how do you follow this? Like, if I'm a keynote, how do I follow 3 hours of such impactful content? And then the final speaker before Marianne gave her keynote was Scarlett Lewis, speaking about losing her son at Sandy Hook and the compassion that she has for the man who took those children's lives and the institute that she started. And Marianne followed that, as Jennifer said, with no notes, like a laser beam. She absolutely just radiated this message and took everything that had been said to another level. And the gift, I think, for us was that we actually got to speak with her after and spend a little bit of time with her and just thank her. This room was so full of powerful people who wanted something from her, whether it was her support, to bend her ear on an issue, to rally her around this or that. It was a very power-packed room. And it felt nice that we were able to just kind of approach her with love and ask her about her campaign. We had a mom that was in politics, and we just said, like, how do you do it? And she kind of went, oh, and she talked about how hard it was. And we were able to just kind of give her a LaFranc sister sandwich of love and just really be of service to her, to give her that love and that energy. And it was a really, really incredible gift. So just to share that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to read a couple comments. Dia Therese writes, my longtime colleagues, the mystic James Twyman, has put Course in Miracles 365 daily lessons to song and dance. And at the Namaste Village, we experience daily beautiful exploration of each lesson. That's awesome. So beautiful. Thank you for that, Dia. And Dana writes, I was there in Ajic, Mexico. It's like a capital of the Course in Miracles. Everyone's studying it. Isn't that wonderful? Living in a place where everybody's studying Course in Miracles. Dana Tomasino writes, I really don't resonate with the whole party system. It only perpetuates polarity and division. Why can't we just vote for individuals? Well, you're right. It's the whole political process has become so institutionalized, just like Christianity became institutionalized and lost much of the actual what Christ was all about. All right. Richard writes, the system is designed to fail. I am going to go to Grace Denise and then Andrew, and then we'll return to Marianne. Grace Denise, I'm putting you on camera, and
Okay.
you're up.
Sorry for my being scruffy. So I have several things to say, very brief each one. First of all, I love Marianne. She's a heroine. I've studied with her. I heard her speak in New York. She actually invited me to come talk to her at a meeting she was going to hold, but I'm handicapped and couldn't make it. So I wanted to share a few ideas really quickly. One about the Christian nationalist. I happened to come across a YouTube the night before last with, and I forgot the name, I was looking it up, but a group that is working with real Christianity ideas and against the Christian nationalists. And he rattled off about 4 or 5 different groups who are doing the same thing. And then today happened to be in my news feed or somewhere about a group called Gospel Coalition. I think they're called New Gospel Coalition or Gospel Coalition. They're also working to counter the Christian nationalist false dogma that's completely anti-Jesus, anti-Christ in every way. So I was wondering, I had this fantasy this morning, if somebody with influence could gather all these groups together and suggest to the Biden administration that they meet with them publicly and have a meeting that's aired to the public about true Christianity and what these groups would like to promote the teaching. So that was a thought. The second thought, I've been trying to write about and promote the idea that we're at the point, I get these scary news items that we're at the point of World War III and all this scary stuff. So what about a world of mutual benefit, mutual reciprocity, just like in healthy relationships should be the principle in marriage and so on. So relationships in our world, what about instead of competition, we have cooperation? I think a lot of the threats are coming from climate change and petroleum dependent nations feeling it existential threat. So if we would take seriously everybody's existential threat and say, let's support one another. It works. I've had success helping people with addiction that way. You support the strength, you support the good, you recognize the fear and you address it. And instead of building up armaments and threats and counter threat and menace and counter menace, what about saying, look, we want to support your strengths and we'll tolerate your abuses of human rights. But we know that once you get more secure within, you will be less a bully without, that we recognize the problem is the weakness inside. So I want to promote those ideas and share them. And I would love them to get to the administration and others in power. So anyway, I want to share those. And the third thing is I've had healing miracles with people. I used to do something called Jorei, which is healing with light. And I've done some healing visualization type practices since then. And I've seen actually healing happen. I know it's possible. So if we can all of us access that greater, amazing universe of love and healing that is the truth, and just keep that open possibility, because keeping that open possibility makes all the difference. And there's been this whole movement kind of nihilism and negativity, and that has its own power. And I just feel we need to counter that at every moment we see that, the cynicism, the so-called practicality, this is realism, and realize the true realism, like Marianne says, is love. It's this field of grace, this field of source energy, divine energy, and that we're part of it. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Grace. That was really very powerful. And it is good to know that there are other organizations that are more focused. It reminds me, Christian organizations, there were 2 primary sects of early Christianity. There were the Essenes, who were primarily vegetarian and were all about the true teachings of Jesus, of Christ consciousness and leading a spiritual life. And then there was the Latin sect, which were converted Romans. And so that very romantic conquer the world approach. And that, of course, is what became the Catholic Church, which is, of course, in the Vatican, which is in Rome, and a much more violent approach and a much more dogmatic. And that's where They rewrote the Bible, pulled out passages around reincarnation. Yogananda spoke quite a bit about that Jesus did teach reincarnation, but it was taken out of the Bible, although there's a couple passages that kind of slipped by the censors, if you will. Anyway, I don't want to go too much further than that, but Jasmine jumped into my lap when you were speaking, Grace Denise. So just
I went to a Bible Institute. I have a very funny background. I've studied Buddhism. I went to a Bible Institute, and I know some about Islam and Hinduism. So anyway, so I just want to say really quickly, though, any real study of the Bible brings out the love as the centerpiece. And I think that we just, in our whole discussion, I've been spending a little bit too much time on social media recently. There's so much provocation, so much extreme language, so much division. So I think anytime we generalize, we need to just really pause and say that's not true. Some of it's true. Yeah. So Pope Francis, I think, is an amazing human being. There's a wonderful true movie documentary one about a priest who was suffering with cancer, but he saved a guy, his life to become successful instead of in drugs and car stealing or whatever he was caught up in. There's so much beauty and goodness, even where there's corruption. So I just hope we can stop simplifying and polarizing. I just think that's not healthy for us as human beings. And
thank you. I did. So thank you. And I wasn't making a comment about, obviously there are incredible Catholics and and the current Pope is, as best as I understand, a true hero. So of course I'm not demonizing. I'm just talking about the distinction between the early Christian church and the Latin church, and just the difference. So
I appreciate it. I agree, Scott. I'm not disagreeing. I just think there's a whole tendency, though, for all of us to realize that the kind of discussion. I was in a group earlier today, and
Grace, I want to get to a couple of the other people.
Thank you.
Yeah, but feel free to pop into the chat box, okay? Because I want to get back to Marianne, and yeah, thank you. Andrew, hey, I want to acknowledge Brother Andrew put together a wonderful show that Omashar was part of on World Unity Week today. I went in and I listened to it. He had Omashar and he had Ray Amana, who was on our show recently, and the wonderful Dana Tomasino. Dana's song that she played was beautiful. Andrew did, he sang for the first time. So anyway, congratulations, Andrew, on a wonderful job with your show today. What do you want to share about, and let's keep it to the subject of Marianne. What do you want to share?
Well, it's actually about the mystic Jesus that I wanted to mention. Okay, so I had my own calling and spiritual awakening to unity consciousness in 1996, and I got connected with the Elohim and the Galactic Federation, who gave me downloads of poetry and music. But Jesus, I got strongly connected with Jesus also, and I was put into a permanent state of unity consciousness. And through the connection of Jesus, it had nothing to do with religion. And it was all about unity consciousness, Christ consciousness. That's what I wanted to say. And I also wanted to say that David Young plays 2 Renaissance flutes and does a portal between heaven and earth meditations. And people have had incredible experiences connecting to the other side. The people, ascended masters, including Jesus, and he calls it the heavenly team. Jesus is with Buddha, Mary Magdalene, all of them. They're all together, working together to help raise consciousness on this planet to help reawaken humanity. And so what Marianne is talking about is totally true. And I just wanted to share that with you, what I also shared.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Beautiful. All right. And once again, congratulations on a wonderful program you did today. Here's Karen S. Hi, Karen.
Hi. Yeah, I was late getting on because I went to a Juneteenth celebration this afternoon. But I first met Marianne many years ago, about almost 35 years ago, when I was living in Houston and going to the Unity Church there. She's originally from that area. But one time she came, and this is, connected with the Jesus thing. She came, one of the times she came, she prayed for everybody in the who was there. that day. She said, well, I'm gonna, do a prayer. And I thought she was gonna do a group prayer. But she went around to everybody in the room, and she had us lined up around the sanctuary, and she touched us on the forehead and said a short prayer. So when she came back again, because I was feeling this high for like a week or two afterwards. And so when she came back again, I asked her, I told her what had happened. And she just looked up at me and she said, that was Jesus. And I mean, that was the most profound thing, because I thought it was just me, but I talked to one of the other ladies at the church and she said she had felt the same thing too. But that's just the energy that comes through Marianne. And that's why I've been following her for many, many years. And I would love to see her at least have some kind of input into whatever administration we have coming in, because she has so much to offer. Even if she's not the president, I would like to have her have something, some influence and stuff.
Wow, what a wonderful story. And I guess what that reflects to me, Karen, is that people that are God-centered, that are clear channels for spirit to flow through, then the Christ consciousness, you could call it that, or Jesus comes through. And I think that's true for any of us. I think probably everybody in this call has had a moment where they've experienced the spirit, flowing through, and a healing occurs, or an aha takes place, or an epiphany happens. And one of my favorite ways for epiphanies to happen is Omashar music. And I think we've got a lot to integrate. We're only halfway through the Marianne video, so I don't know if we're going to see the whole thing, but I'm loving all the comments. But I think it's time for some Omashar, because spirit flows through him in a beautiful way. Maybe it's Jesus. Maybe it's Jesus flowing through Omashar.
It is. It is, brother. There we go. Brighter than the sun. Here where life is one. All the past falls like rain into the soil of future dreams. Footprint in the sand, eyes shining like the stars, and the way is suddenly so clear, and we know what has to be done. Still, we wonder why flowers keep on blooming, the stardust in our eyes lifts us all to a higher plane, a deeper truth, our rightful place, and still we wonder why. Life
promise to fulfill. Now a vision is revealed, and the blessing of who we really are can be felt throughout our world. And still we wonder why flowers keep on blooming, the stardust in our eyes lifts us all to a higher plane, a deeper truth, our rightful place. And still we wonder why. Love, the footprint in the sand, eyes shining like the stars, and the way is suddenly so clear, 'cause we know what has to be done. 'Cause still we wonder why flowers keep on blooming, the stardust in our eyes lifts us all to a higher plane, a deeper truth, our rightful place. And still we wonder why. Brighter than the sun, here where life is one. All the past falls like rain into the soil of future dreams. Still we wonder why.
Look at how many people love that song. I mean, it's just great seeing all of you dancing and smiling, and oh my God, isn't that beautiful? Just beautiful.
I often don't watch everybody, but this time I have one screen with everybody dancing on it. I've got the little Frank sisters loving us up, and Dia and Menon and Dana and Eleanor and Waterfall and Lynn and Leaf and Ayata and Eon rocking in the background. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was magical. This we should just take that little segment and make a clip out of that.
Right.
In fact, you know what? Everybody stay on camera, and I'm going to take a class photo of all of you. So go ahead and act like you're dancing. 1, 2, 3. And one more for luck. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, I'll post those in the chat box, and you'll be able to see how they turned out. Remember when you used to go to those photo things with your friend and pay $1 and get 4 photos? We're doing a Global Peace Tribe version of that right now. There's a lot of comments that have come into the chat box, and so I'm going to do my best to read some of them. Dia corrected me. It's pronounced ahihik. Thank you. I hope I got it right that time. Ahihik. And yeah, she talks a lot about the village of Yogananda, that it was one of the spiritual centers of the future. George talks about having friends there. Dana has spent time there. Jimmy Twyman, of course, who we love. Sylvia writes, thanks everyone for the Om Trident healing you shared with Lily the cat and myself a few weeks ago. She continues to recover well from surgery on June 3rd and is zipping about with increasing intensity. So we're happy to hear that she's doing well, and the cone of shame will come off of her cat later this week. This is good. Carol Craig, we love Carol, and she retired. I'm just reading that she retired yesterday and is heading to Trinidad. So congratulations on your retirement. She's in a hotel in Orlando, Florida. It's late, but she still is tuning in to her Global Peace Drivers. We appreciate that. And yes, today is Juneteenth. You know, we've done shows with Antoinette on Juneteenth in the past. And we're going to be doing a show with Antoinette next week. So you're going to have a whole show with Pato and Antoinette next Wednesday. All right, let's go back to and see what question Debra Giusti has for, and where'd the video go? Hold on a second. Okay, here we go.
Doing this at the original presidential election and now, what you see, because I know a lot of people on this who are listening to you now know they're here for the awakening. They know, as you say, they're here for the transition. And we're coming here with all our gifts and what we're meant to do, and we're in gear moving forward. And I'm experiencing that the world is waking up, that the world is shifting. When that happens, the dark starts to come alive and, you know, rabble rouse even more. But I'm wondering, as you go there and you talk to the people and you get in their hearts from last time and this time, and as you've seen progress, do you see this awakening happening in your world? More people waking up, understanding the truth, and understanding what needs to happen through what you share with them?
Well, as I said before, I think one world is dying and one world is struggling to be born. I said this after my last campaign, but this one even more so. People are wonderful. People are not the problem. That's almost the tragedy of this country, because I believe that the American people are decent. I think we're intelligent, no more than people anywhere else, but no less than people anywhere else. And I feel that we are people ready to be called to a noble pursuit. And I don't think any of that has to do with left or right. And in many times when we would be talking about the deep issues that are confronting us, and like we've talked about here tonight, we can't sugarcoat it. We have some serious issues. And sometimes people would say to me, I'd be in a room with hundreds of people, and people would say to me, where do you get your hope? And I would say, my hope lies in the fact that not one person here has taken out your phone tonight. What was I saying? It means that everybody in this room is leaning forward and listening. Every person in the room is thinking. You know, not that we have easy answers. The American temperament, we're good with a to-do list. We want to know what to do. Just tell me how to fix it. We can fix it. Well, these aren't times like that. But when I would see the concern on people's faces. So when you ask me, what did I see? I saw deep, mature, adult concern. But that's good. Last time, because I've run as a Democrat, right? So last time there was just this focus, we got to get rid of Trump, got to get rid of Trump. Well, people know that the problems go deeper than any one man now. And people are not stupid. They know that it's complicated now, and it's hard, and systems are locked up. But people, what I found was people leaning forward, listening. And if we can hold the questions together, knowing that there aren't immediate answers, the answers, though, will unfold organically from changes in us. We all know the line from Einstein, the problems of the world will not be solved from the level of thinking we were at when we created them. But it also won't be they won't be solved from a level of thinking that just bypasses the problem. And I think what I saw was inspiring, sad, because I see how much the political establishment mitigates against the full expression of the deeper yearning of people. But I leave that phase of things with a deep belief in what's possible once the will of the people is really released. Right now, the political establishment sits like a fist on top of the fullest expression of the people, which makes the people angry and frustrated, and that's a very disruptive, almost like children in an alcoholic home. Everybody's agitated, and that's not good at all. But I do always remember Gandhi saying politics should be sacred, and I would seek in my talks, political talks, to speak from a place which really allowed for the consideration of political issues from that deeper heartfelt place. And what I found is that people are more than ready for it. More than ready for it.
Yes, we are, definitely. And I want to deepen with you about the subtitle of your book, The Mystic Jesus, The Mind of Love. A little while ago, this word came into my awareness. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Wetiko. I think it's Native American. It means mind virus. And when you speak about the oppressive system like a fist over the people, and this darkness or this viciousness that includes the media, the financial institutions, is this the culmination of this mind virus of ego? It's almost like narcissism itself. That
is what it is. The ego, I'm sorry.
Just would you illuminate how to step out of that, even in our own system, our own family systems, our own lives, into this mind of love? Like, where does forgiveness come into that?
Well, mind virus is a great expression, and that is what the ego is. So let's look at how this works in nature. Every cell in the human body is programmed through natural intelligence to go meet up with other cells, and they actualize through collaboration with each other. The cells collaborate with each other in order to serve the higher functioning of the organ and the organism of which they're part. Every once in a while, a cell disconnects from that collaborative function, disconnects from the memory of its function, and sort of goes insane and goes off to do its own thing. And that's a cancer cell. And then it meets up with similarly disconnected cells, and that's a tumor. That malignancy has infected human consciousness. The cancer cell being the very thought, it's all about me. And that's why you said it is narcissism. It is a state of consciousness of the human race. The very thought, you know, we've taken rugged individualism and turned it into rugged narcissism. We've gone too far in this exaltation of the individual. And at this point, the healing of that is to remember, I'm not here alone. It's not about my separate identity. It's not just about me. It's about all of us. Now, forgiveness in the Course in Miracles is very different than the traditional notion of forgiveness, because the traditional notion of forgiveness is, I'm spiritual, you were a jerk, but I'm so good, you see, that I will forgive you. The Course in Miracles says that's covert judgments. That real forgiveness is realizing who the other is. We are all love. And nothing that we do, we can eclipse our true nature. We cannot destroy our true nature. Your true nature, which is love itself, was created by God. It's an idea in his mind, and an idea does not leave its source. So if I'm talking to you or in some interaction with you and you are unkind to me, right? I am hurt by that, and I'm likely to have judgment of you. based on what you just said or what you just did that might have been loveless. The Course in Miracles says forgiveness is when I am willing to extend my perception beyond what my physical senses just perceived to what my heart knows to be true about you. It's a selective remembering. The Course says anytime a person did something wrong, can you think of one moment where they got it right by you? So forgiveness is the process of coming to realize that we are all love hidden in here, and sometimes we make mistakes. Forgiveness, if I forgive you, that means I'm willing to know that who you are is not your mistake. To the extent to which I'm willing to hold that who you are is not your mistake, to that extent I'm willing to hold that neither am I who I am when I make mistakes. And if I continue to focus on your guilt, I will not be able to not focus on my guilt, because after all, there's only one of us here.
Powerful. Thank you. It makes me wonder, just like they did mass meditations and in the areas the violent crime went down, if we came together, the little people, we the people, and did mass forgiveness release ceremonies and grief ceremonies and came back to the heart together, the shift that would happen.
You know, before the Iraq War and the run-up to the Iraq War, I know the people in the TM organization, the Transcendental Meditation Movement, they were doing something with ships, I think in the Persian Gulf, where they were sending mass meditators. We also know when the Pope visits places, absolutely mass meditation and prayer for the world.
You know, there's a wonderful story that during the Vietnam War, there was a plan brought to Richard Nixon, who was president at the time, and America was losing the war. And they presented to him a plan to use nuclear weapons. And it was a rainy day in Washington, D.C., and Nixon saw all these protesters out in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
And it went on the record that he said, when I see all these kids out in the rain protesting now, what the hell are they going to do? What's going to happen if we use nuclear weapons? And he voted no. And what always touches me about that story and brings tears is those kids were probably saying, what are we doing? You know, nobody's paying any attention to us. And yet they, that day, very possibly prevented a nuclear weapons from being used. And most of them will never know the impact that they made. And I always try and remember that when I'm seeking inspiration for the small things we might do. You know, little Marianne sending those $5 to leukemia. Those little small things we do sometimes have an impact that we may not ever know.
Well, always do, actually. The Course in Miracles says all thought creates form on some level. And there's some line in the book somewhere about how you forgive someone who do something that might affect situations on the other side of the world that you'll never know about. Yeah. It's that butterfly effect, right?
Right, exactly. I want to take a moment to just remind everybody about a wonderful way to support Marianne. Go to her website, marianne.com. Of course, there's all sorts of wonderful things that she has there. And this is where we can get the Mystic Jesus. And already, Marianne, you'll see in the chat box a lot of people commenting on how the book, even in this first week that it's been out, is impacting them.
But thank you. That means so much to me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Means so much to me.
All right. And I will send you the chat box so you can go through tonight or tomorrow, whenever, and read it. A lot of people are asking questions about, is there any way that you can see through the political system? Is there any light at the end of the tunnel for how that system can change and a candidate such as yourself can eventually emerge?
We're in trouble, but our ancestors have been in trouble, and ultimately justice prevailed. We are not the first generation to have serious problems. We had slavery in this country, and yet we responded to that with abolition. We had the institutionalized suppression of women. We responded to that with the suffragist movement, the passage of the 19th Amendment. We had the Gilded Age and the inherent financial inequities there. A generation responded to that with the establishment of organized labor. We had segregation and the institutionalized suppression of Black people in this country. Our ancestors responded to that with the civil rights movement. It couldn't have been easy for them. They certainly had their desperate days, and they could not see any reasonable guarantee of success. And yet they persevered and they ultimately prevailed. And I think that's where we need to live in faith right now. If you're asking me, do I have a reasonable belief that we're going to fix this thing? I've seen the belly of the beast. I know within the mortal plane how many locks there are on the door. However, it's like when people say to me, I find the whole thing traumatizing. Well, don't you think the people who walked across the bridge at Selma were traumatized? We have to keep leaning, and we will make it, if we show up. I hope that next time there's a candidate who might be speaking your heart, you got to show up for them. You got to really show up. And the people in the when you look at the numbers of us who represent the transformational movement, we could elect the president.
Wow.
But we have to show up, and we have to be grown-ups. And we have to not listen to the nonsense of political establishments, which represent an old way of doing things. And we have to be serious. When we're serious and we show up on the primary level, but this is the thing, this is true spiritually and it's true politically. The era of data collection is over. We know what we need to know. Now it's will we have the courage to do what we need to do. And so will we do it? Yeah, and we'll do it if we decide to do it. And I'll tell you something, the transformational movement alone can do it. But we have to show up. We have to actually get involved in campaigns. We have to give financially. We have to get ready there on the primary level. When people smear, this is how it works, okay? The FBI calls you. And the FBI says, please come in. We want to give you a briefing that we give to every candidate. So I go there and they say, well, Ms. Williamson, there are some really dirty games that get played and you should know what they are and be on the lookout. And they tell you all these dirty tricks that they play. And then it says, then they say the three main sources of this stuff are Russia, China, and Iran. And I was already at a point in my campaign where I could say, I've started to see all those things, but I think they come from right here. Mm-hmm. We have to be not naive. And if you see someone who speaks to your heart, don't just say, oh, that's nice. Mm-hmm. Get involved. And also the kind of smears and character assassination and psyops. It's like they say, about mugging and all that. If you see something, say something. If somebody's mugging, you start yelling. We can't be silent. Can't be silent. Got to speak up. And I think a lot of people, I have to tell you, in the transformational community, some people are so afraid of, turning someone off, getting fewer clicks, brand protection.
So I have a big question to follow that. And this is one that really tugs at our hearts every day. Can you speak to your viewpoint, solution, holding what's going on in Israel and Gaza?
Well, if I had been president when it happened, I was thankful grateful and impressed by the president's moral clarity on October 7th. But the next morning, he said, I'm going to be meeting with Jewish American leaders this morning. And I remember thinking to myself, he should be saying, I'm meeting with Jewish American leaders this morning, and this afternoon I will be meeting with Arab American leaders, Muslim American leaders,
Yes.
Palestinian American leaders, and so forth. Our national creed is the Declaration of Independence. It's our vision and our mission statement, all men are created equal, and that doesn't just mean Americans. So our highest ally should be humanity itself. And we should stand for the robust and equal commitment to the safety, security, and sovereignty of both peoples. So if I had been president, I would have said to Bibi Netanyahu, help you defeat Hamas, absolutely, but tell me how you're going to do it. Tell me exactly your plans. What's your strategy? How are you going to protect civilians? Because we know how Hamas has built themselves into those areas. How are you going to do it? How are you going to protect civilians? And you need to hear me when I tell you that the day this military operation is over, we're going to straight to two-state solution. We're not, nothing short of that. And if I had not received an adequate response to all three of those, I would not have allowed $1 or one weapon to be given. Giving carte blanche support on a military and a financial level to Bibi Netanyahu is not what I would have done. Many of his policies over the last 15 years are part of what helped stir up much of what has occurred. You know, one of the things I've talked a lot about, and that way predates Israel and Palestine, is the phenomenon where anytime you have large groups of desperate people, it becomes a petri dish out of which all manner of societal and personal dysfunction becomes almost inevitable, including vulnerability to ideological capture by genuinely psychotic forces. Not to even mention the fact that Netanyahu himself thought he could control Hamas, so he had actually helped them at one point. We can't ignore the fact that the settlements are illegal, the occupation is illegal, nor can we ignore the unbelievable evil and barbarism and brutality of October 7th. Neither people is leaving. So you've got 9 million here and 9 million there. They're not going anywhere. So there are people who exalt the rights of one of those peoples at the expense of the rights of the other, on both sides. And I believe that the United States should be, and I believe that there are others. There are Arab powers willing to step in here and help, but they say it's got to be with the realization there's got to be a two-state solution here. And I understand the trauma. I understand the trauma on both sides that helped lead to this. But that's where we should be now. I don't. There is, they've been saying for decades on this one, and it's certainly true now. There is no military solution here. And the United States, if I had been president, now Bill Clinton tried, and Jimmy Carter tried. But since then, America's kind of like, well, no more of that. And that's how I see it. The humanitarian cost of what is happening in Gaza today is not acceptable. I think that Netanyahu is an obstruction to peace, as Senator Schumer did, but I also am uncomfortable with the ways that some people, the hatred, the people of Israel are not Netanyahu any more than the people of Palestine or Hamas.
Right.
And some of the hatred being shown, it's one thing to be against a country's policy, but some of the hatred of the country itself and hatred of Jews is very disconcerting to me. And a peace movement should be about love. It should not be about hate.
And how can
And
we?
it can't just be about love for just one of them. It's got to be about love for both. Somebody told me that his minister said, whose tears am I supposed to ignore? I think, in the Course in Miracles, it says, God does not give you victory in battle. He lifts you above the battlefield. The Rumi poem we've all heard, out beyond all ideas of good and bad, right or wrong, there is a field, I'll meet you here. Arabs and Jews have lived, listen, Arabs and Jews were closer to one another. Muslims and Jews for centuries were closer to one another than either one of them were to Christians. And this is a horrible, aberrational, tragic chapter. And I keep my eye on not only the possibility, but the deep feeling in my heart that we'll get beyond this. You know, in terms of the kinds of things that we're about, there are many people in that part of the world about these things too. And they're including Course in Miracles, things like that. There's a whole transformational Israel is filled with, you know, because the Kabbalah is so mystical. And of course, there's mystical Islam. There are people in Israel and Palestine who have been doing such profound peace work. And part of the tragedy is that some of them were those who were killed that day because they lived in that area. Refuse to hate either. Refuse to hate either.
And how do we process all this in our hearts when we see the children dying and all the people in Palestine going through so much suffering?
They are going through suffering and they shouldn't go through that suffering, and it is terrible and we should not support it. And the Russians have killed 500,000 Ukrainians. Mm-hmm. We killed 1 million people in Iraq. Everybody grow up.
Mm-hmm. So it just creates a fierce anger in us to keep on and keep on.
It's heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. And I listen, I admire the protests, you know, the ceasefire. I admire it. It's just that there are some sinister forces within it mm-hmm. that are deeply anti-Semitic, that are deeply, you know, like you probably saw what that woman Eden Golan went through. It's just a singing contest. You and I are American. And during the Iraq War, where once again, and we were completely unprovoked, Iraq did nothing to us. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Yeah. Saddam Hussein was a secularist. He kept Al-Qaeda out. Americans weren't told that because of what you're doing in Iraq, we won't do business with you. You can't work. You're a hateful person. You can't even be at a singing contest. You can't be in our sports. We have to hold all of these painful juxtapositions. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's horrible. And I have been saying ceasefire from the beginning. But there are also people who are not just against the policies of the Israelis, they're for the destruction of the country and the complete delegitimization of Israel. And like I said, neither, where are they supposed to go? I mean, where's anybody supposed to go? They both, and there's so many, you know, Jesus was born in Palestine, okay? We all know that. Muhammad was born 500 years later. So who's indigenous here? So we need to get over all of that. They both belong there. Both peoples belong there. Mm-hmm. And we have to hold that. And there are wonderful people, you know, it is, but the United States should be helping to broker. And let me tell you something, there are Arab leaders who are ready. We need an international consortium at this point, mainly led by Arab leaders, but we should be a passionate participant. And we're going to have a two-state solution here. We need a ceasefire. We need release of those hostages. We need release of those hostages. Yes, it's what Israel's doing is terrible, and what Hamas is doing is terrible. Hello. We need a ceasefire. We need a release of the hostages. We need a two-state solution, and that is what the United States should stand for. And what
I'm going to stop it there. Excuse me. You know, a long time ago, I did a television show with Zachariah Sitchin. He is long since passed, but he was a really fascinating author. He had learned Aramaic and Sanskrit and Hebrew so that he could read all of the original sacred spiritual texts in their original languages, and really before they all got translated and manipulated. And he wrote many, many books, and he was out there, but he was this brilliant scholar. And he pointed out a lot about the fascination of Jerusalem and the fact that 3 of the world's 5 biggest religions are all centered in this little tiny place on the planet called Jerusalem. And he believes, and had a lot of interesting evidence, that Jerusalem was a landing site for ancient extraterrestrials that came to this planet and helped seed the country, seed humanity. And I won't go off on a whole thing about it, but when she was talking about, all the different people that are there, yeah, it's a very sacred, special place on the planet. And I personally absolutely agree. A 2-state solution is the only long-term solution. I'm going to read a few comments, and I think I'm going to wrap up because it's 8:30. There's more of Marianne, so I'm going to put into the chat box again the link to this entire interview that we did with her last month, so you can go back and watch the end of it. I'll also post it for those of you watching on Facebook and watching on YouTube. I'll post it on my Facebook profile page, so you can go and watch the rest of it. But for those of you that are watching, I realized that we forgot to tell you something very important, and that is we want you to join us. Come join the Global Peace Tribe. It's easy to do that. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com. globalpeacetribe.com. You can learn all about us. There's Marianne Williamson right there. And all the different people that are on our shows, Kristen and Deepak Chopra and Magic with Jeff McBride. We need to have Jeff come back on again soon. And of course, you can then click register for the new season. And that'll take you to our registration page. There's lots of different levels that you can come in at, as low as $22. And you get all the links to all of our shows for the next 4 months. So come join the Global Peace Tribe. I will change my background to help you remember who we are. There we are. Come join us. It's an amazing group of people. If you could see all the comments going on in the chat box you heard from some of our people, come in and dance with us. Yes, you too can dance with Eleanor Joy and Ian and Omashar. So I want to just really encourage everybody to come and join us. And I also want to share what we're going to, of course, close with an Omashar song, but I want to share with you what we're going to be doing on Saturday night. It's that time of the month. We are going to be doing another show with Tangela and Soul Search. And we've got an amazing show. John Gray is going to come back. John is the best-selling author of the 1970s and 80s. John sold more books than any other author in the 70s and 80s. And he's still going strong. Kimberly Meredith is going to be doing healing work for you. So make sure you're in the Zoom room because she's going to do some spontaneous healing. And then Omashar's favorite friends, AJ and Thomas, the channels. I mentioned that because on one of our shows, I asked Omashar what's one of the things that one of his memories of Awakening World. And his first memory was AJ and Thomas. So we're bringing them back just for you, Omashar. And another wonderful musical artist that we love, Tatiana Speed, will be back with us. And of course, Omashar. So that's what's happening on Saturday night. Please do join us. And thank you for all the wonderful comments that have come in. Yes, it has been too long since Cornflower. I'll reach out to him again. I reached out to him about 6 months ago, and he was very busy. But I will reach out again. I do want to read a couple of last comments. Grace Denise writes, the Quran says violence is only justified where there is oppression and expulsion. So my hope is that Hamas can set down its arms permanently. If no more oppression and with a partial right of return with fair compensation, reparation were not possible. Ayada writes, I so appreciate Marianne's perspective on the Palestine-Israel situation, except I would place more emphasis on the reality that Hamas grew out of the desperation, deprivation, and lack of basic human rights for the Palestinian people and the loss of their homeland when Israel, aided by the United States, invaded and seized their sovereign territory in the 1940s. That level of suffering eventually turns into hatred. I agree, Ayada, I agree. Grace Denise says, yes, agreeing to a sustainable and fair two-state solution is important. Carol Craig writes, we have so much blood on our hands in this United States. I was born here in 1960 and we've never had a damn day we weren't at some war. This is true. On a more positive note, our beloved Dorina Joy reminds us that it's the summer solstice, everybody. Well, for those of us in North America, summer. For those of you down south, such as Dorina, winter solstice. And there is a global synchronized solstice meditation by the Earth Rainbow Network on making peace with our past, present, and future. Meditation is scheduled to take place as the Earth reaches the apex moment of the solstice, which is 2051 GMT time. That would be 1328 Pacific time. So let me do my math. 12, so about 1:30 in the afternoon for those of us on the West Coast. So 1:30 tomorrow is a good time to be meditating. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. Oh my gosh, all sorts of other comments came in. Let me see. People are sharing. Tatiana. Karen writes, the Jews who were brought to Israel from Europe after the war were for the most part not ethnic Jews. That has a lot to do with what's going on today. The land was stolen from the Palestinians to form the state of Israel. This is true. And I'm going to close again with Dorina. In honor of Marianne and her vision of the Department of Peace, I wanted to share an awesome new word that is in resonance with our Global Peace Tribe. And the word is irenic. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Irenic. It means aiming or aimed at peace, peaceful, promoting or fitted to promote peace, non-confrontational, peaceful. Irenic means favoring, conducive to, or operating toward peace, moderation, or conciliation. It comes from the Greek word for peace and is related to the goddess. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce it. It looks like Irene, but there's an E at the beginning of the Irene. And Meg Benedicte is doing a global meditation at noon also tomorrow. All right, thank you, Dia. I'm glad you enjoyed the broadcast. You know what I like the most is hearing from you, really, honestly. So let's do more of these. I want to hear from you. And now we're going to hear from the Omega Man, not Charlton Heston. The Omega Man in Global Peace Tribe world is Omashar.
Deep breath. Lost in a sea of illusion, feeling so alone. Lost side of completion. Know the reason why. Drink in the waters of healing and be healed. We're coming home to the part of us that's waking up. And we know deep inside of us we've got a friend. We remember the design of our lives. We remember the desire in our hearts, and we feel love, and we feel love. So dive into the depths of your being. Know that all is well. And dive into the deepest ocean and see the truth. Cast off the cover of darkness. Free yourself from fear. And show that you're ready and willing to make the change. We're coming home to the part of us that's waking up. And we know deep inside of us we've got a friend. And we remember the design of our lives. We remember the desire in our hearts, and we feel love, and we feel
Wasn't that just the sweetest? So beautiful, so beautiful. Thank you. I'm going to take another class photo. I forgot to put the last one into the chat box, so hang on, let me get ready here. I'll do that. Okay, everybody smile and look at the camera on 3. 1, 2, 3. This is the Omashar chorus, the Omashar choral group.
Hey, where are you in the photo, Scott? Come on.
Oh, well, I don't know how I could possibly remove. So, but before I forget, let me put some of those screenshots into the chat box so you all can save them. Oh, let's see, we're going to send to everyone. So I'm putting in the screenshots right now. It'll take a moment, so we're going to have to chat for a moment so you guys have a chance to see them and enjoy them. I know what we can chat about. We're going to chat about Omashar's music because we can get his music by going to Bandcamp. And it's really, really easy. Just go to omashar.bandcamp.com. omashar.bandcamp.com. And that's where you can get his albums. And we do want to support Omashar because he does so much to support us. If you click where it says green screenshot, then you'll be able to see them. Here, I'll pull up one of them so you can all see what it looks like. Here's the one that we just took. Hold on a moment. There we go. There you all are. Oh, actually, no, that was one of the earlier ones. That was with Dana, when Dana was dancing with us. But that's pretty good. Especially like the sisters. The sisters look good. And look at
Franks.
And look at Lynn dancing behind Leaf. I like that. All of you, you look fabulous. What a beautiful global peace tribe we have. And then here's the one we just took. There we go. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at all of you. So these screenshots are in the chat box, so grab them if you want them. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I will put it in the chat box one more time, the link for the entire show, because we only got about 2/3 of the way through Marianne's interview. There's so much that she shared. Oh, I almost forgot something very important. Marianne has a new video about the workshop she's doing this weekend. I am so glad I remembered this. This would have been a big problem if I had forgotten this. So hold on.
Could you also put Saturday's meditation link, the global meditation for peace link in the chat again?
I will do that. I will do that.
Thank you.
So actually, we've got a little 3.5-minute video where I can do all those things in the chat box. This is from Marianne about a workshop she's leading this weekend on the mystic Jesus. So I'll pay close attention.
And I'm really excited about the publication of my newest book. It's called The Mystic Jesus, The Mind of Love. I want to tell you a little something about the inception of this book. It was several years ago, and I received a call from my publisher at Harper One. And something happened that had never quite happened to me before, and that's that the publisher suggested the title of a book or the subject of a book, as opposed to my telling them what I wanted to write next. He told me that within the publishing field, people were asking a lot, do you have any books about Jesus that are not specifically tied to the Christian religion? Now, I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, and the Course in Miracles uses these traditional Christian concepts, but in non-traditional, psychotherapeutically oriented ways. So the Jesus of A Course in Miracles is not tied to dogma or doctrine or any religion. It's a pure metaphysical filter. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're talking about archetypes. We're talking about deep spiritual forces that cannot be owned or monopolized by any particular religion or any particular group of people. That's the Jesus that I know as a student of the Course in Miracles. I had always thought that maybe one day I would want to write a book about Jesus, but I don't think anything could be more daunting than that. Remember, I'm Jewish, and so I'm not speaking about Jesus as a Christian scholar. I'm not even speaking about Jesus as a Christian. I'm speaking about the Jesus as I believe in the 21st century. He's starting to be available. He's starting to be seen by so many people for whom he's become like a fossil, you know, stuck in a glass case in a museum somewhere. And there's a deep yearning of the heart to liberate that concept, to liberate that perception, so that this isn't the Jesus that you necessarily learned about in Sunday school. Although for millions of people who read the Course in Miracles, it is a Jesus who actually explains everything you learned in Sunday school. So whether you're a Christian, whether you're not a Christian, whether you're another religion, whether you're secular, whatever it is, but you are interested in this amazing force on the planet, undeniable force, which for many of us is not only a force on the planet, but a profound force in our hearts, then I hope that this book will be of value to you. It's called The Mystic Jesus, The Mind of Love. And we're only just beginning to mine the meaning of all this. What is the archetypal significance of the Annunciation, of Mary's pregnancy, of the gestation of the Christ child? What does the birth of the Christ into the world mean? Who are those three kings, and what does that mean? What does it mean, the water into the wine, and what does it mean walking on water? What are we being told by all this? What are the miracles? What are the teachings? And most importantly of all, what is the meaning in your life of the crucifixion and the resurrection? If you're interested, I hope that you'll join me. We're going to do a whole weekend of deep diving on this, and I think we're going to do more than that, more than just this one weekend. But this one weekend, a kind of companion to this book. If this is of interest to you, I hope that you'll join me. I brought all my heart to this book, and I'm going to bring all my heart to the teaching that we do based on the book. It's a real honor, it's a real privilege, and I hope it's of meaning and some level of illumination for you as well. Thanks.
So if you go to Marianne.com to find out more, if you're interested in taking the workshop, go to Marianne.com, scroll down just a little bit, that's where the book is. That's the video we just watched. And then where it says learn more, and that takes us into the information about the workshop she's leading this weekend. It's on this Saturday and Sunday. You then click register now, and that's how you can register to be part of this 2-day seminar with Marianne Williamson. You'll receive a visual recording of all the sessions, an audio recording of the sessions, plus an exclusive collection of some of Marianne's celebrated seminars. And it's only $199, one payment. Just click register now. That'll take you to the registration page. And I would love for some of our Global Peace Tribers to do this. Maybe our sisters, since you don't know what to do this weekend, maybe you might want to do Marianne's, Charlotte and Jennifer might want to do Marianne's workshop. There's an idea. All right, it's almost 9 o'clock, and other than a muffin and a banana, I have not eaten. So, and Jasmine Bear is looking at me like, Dad, it's way late. We haven't had our last walk for tonight. So I am going to get focused on that. But I sure have enjoyed spending this evening with you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for everybody who got up and danced. Thank you, everybody who shared comments. And thank you, my beloved brother Omashar, for being the alpha and omega of our shows. Love you so much. Did you see the comment in the chat box where somebody has the fantasy?
I did. So build it and they shall come. That's what I shall say.
Build that community, we'll be there.
And we'll be there. Make mine a 2-story with a nice balcony. Thank you.
Take care, everybody. I hope to see you. When's our next time together? Our next time is on Saturday night.
It is.
Saturday night. But remember to meditate tomorrow at 1:30 in the afternoon Pacific time.
And Saturday day.
At 2:22, exactly.
Pacific time.
All right. I'll send out an email tomorrow, by the way, that will remind everybody about those things. Take care, everybody. Much love. Good night.